Our next speaker I'd like to introduce to the stage is Gary Besaw. Gary is the director of the Menominee Tribal Department of Agriculture and Food Systems. He is an enrolled member of the Menominee tribe and has served in a Menominee tribal legislature for 14 years, twice holding positions as chairman, vice chairman, and also secretary. So with that, please give a welcome to Director Gary Besaw.
So Nate Matt Manewa Nate Mamach Tawak Mashik Mauni Wiak Eos I to Satya Ospawas Net Swisian Notota Manua Yawa Owasa Go Pack Go. Did I say that or think that? It could be indigenous Tourette's taking over. I got abused yesterday. I wore a Packer shirt. I caught it even from a really old lady. She just abused me. So anyways, I'm getting them back, I guess. What I said was, I called you as we call ourselves. I welcomed you that way. Nate Mamachatawak, my fellow mover. That's what we call our relatives. Because we moved from place to place and we lived off the land. To ricing camp, to fishing camp, to hunting camp, to berry camp, you name it. Maple syrup camp. We did that sustainably. At one time, Menominee had over 12 million acres of land, and we're down to 250,000 acres. So we've reduced that, so thus the need for some of the things that we're going to be doing today. I also said my name is Oskapawas, and my mom tells me I'm always supposed to say that. Introduce myself. I'm Bear Clan. So I'm a speaker and keeper of the law in our way. And I also said that this is a good place to be. And I'm happy to be here. This was a long time coming. It's a good thing that we have here. So my talk is going to be on the Hearth Act. And it might sound like a policy wonk thing, kind of is, but it isn't. As we get going, you'll see. So why the Hearth Act? Well, back in 2012, the Hearth Act was signed into law, and it took over, or it amended the Long-Term Leasing Act in 1955. What this does, and it says that in the law, the clear intent of the act was to provide tribes with the opportunity to exercise their inherent sovereignty in drafting regs to meet their particular needs and to expedite the leasing process. And I tell you right now, we have lands that have spent years waiting to be approved. And I know many of you have that same concern. Well, we're going to work through it. Some of the reasons, and I've listed some bullet points down here. Sovereignty and jurisdiction to draft regs to meet our particular needs and wants. We have unique constitutional needs. We have different types of archaeological reviews. We don't have a migration story, the Menominee people. We've always been there, and we're blessed that it's that way. So everything there, people die, they're buried. Long time ago, they never had caskets and all this other stuff. They were buried in the ground. And then their energy dissolved. And pretty soon, the berry bushes and the trees and the animals, they took that energy into themselves. So that energy just got transformed. So to us, we are that forest. So we think different. Some people do that. If you're blessed to have all our sister tribes here, if you're blessed to have that. So we see things a bit different, like many of you. So we take that into account when we do our regs. Expedite the leasing process. Like I said, we have some that years have been struggling. Provide more certainty for tribal members for investment, expansion, and contracting. We set up our leasing so within the actual Hearth Act, they allow for 25 years with 2 additional up to 75 years for an agriculture zone place. So we did 10, and then if you'd make improvements, and it can go up to 25 years, and then you can have it, again, you can have it renewed one more time. So we're trying to set some certainty for people. If they want to put additional stuff, investment into that property, well, here's that chance to do that. Meet qualifications for a loan. Our grant providers and vendors, contractors, we know that if you apply for certain USDA or otherwise, they're going to say, do you have control over that land? And how long do you have control over that land? Well, we want to give them certainty so they can be eligible for those. If they're putting up hoop houses or doing whatever, that they would be able to do that. Economic development, and this just goes into the big picture. We're looking at economic development then to really create a food system where we grow stuff that actually in the long term is going to go to our food distribution. So we pay the people for what they grow, but we make sure we know what's in that food. We know what kind of fertilizer and everything else they did. And one of these, the importance of proper decision making. Remember, if the Bureau, if the Secretary is not approving these leases, but you are, in a certain sense, people say, well, it's a diminishment of the trust responsibilities. Well, we'll take that trade-off. But we're saying to ourselves, now we got to make sure, though, that we're doing the right decision. So it makes it a tougher decision. So this was what we did. This was by ordinance. Through our ordinances, anytime you do something of a general or permanent nature affecting the tribe or the land, you have to have, by ordinance, you got to approve it. So before we did any of the Hearth Act, we first had to approve it through an ordinance, through a law, and then send it to the Bureau. So this talks about when we started that process. And this is in 2016. And some of the purpose, Menominee historically inhabited more than 12 million acres of land that became the state of Wisconsin. So even the name Wisconsin, that comes from our world, that comes from our languages, Wiscosik. That means a good place to live. Can raise a family, get good food off there, clean water, and they have a really good football team. Oh, God. Did I do that again? I'm sorry. I'm getting some little old lady back is what I'm doing here. So 90%, we're down to 250,000 acres of land, but it's all forest. You can see it, NASA can see it with their satellites, and they use that to help set coordinates when they fly by. Solid forest. And only 10% of it is available for other uses. It's almost all forest. Well, when we wrote the ordinance, we said, well, we want to recognize the authority of the tribe to come into and issue residential, agriculture, and commercial leases. You can do it for one or all three of those purposes. Menominee's writing theirs for all three, to establish procedures for environmental review, approval, management, and enforcement of those leases. So if you do that, meeting the certain regs that the feds ask for, then they have to approve that, and then you can make those decisions on leasing. So it governs all of our leasing. Let me see if there's anything else that I want to deal with on here. So this talks about the purpose. Let's move on. And here I just mentioned in our statute here, our code, it says it applies to all of our residential, agriculture, and commercial. It could have just been one of those. We wanted all three. And recreational leases, it doesn't apply, and we never went through the Allotment Act, the Dawes Act. Thankfully, all them crusty old Menom Indians, they said no. So we lucked off. Amendments, once your Hearth Act ordinance is approved by the feds, then you can make amendments to it yourself. It's only if they're major substantive amendments would the secretary have to approve them again. But the minor stuff, we don't have to send it to them. We can amend our own code. So look, here's the issue. We started with putting our Hearth Act together. Remember, in 2012, it was signed into law. So we started back probably in 2014, started having the community meetings and whatnot. We finally got it ready to start the public hearing process, which is the process we start for for our laws. And by December 1st on 2016, we had final approval from our legislature. Ordinance is approved. Okay, if it's approved, then we can send it to Interior, send it to the Bureau, and we say, take a look at this. Did we meet everything you need? If they did, say yes. So on March 13th, they sent it back, March 13th on 2017, they said, yeah, we got it December 19th. They didn't tell us till March that they even got it from the December 1st date. And they said within 120 days, so that would be on April 18th, which was only a month from then, yeah, we're going to review it and everything, and then we're going to get it to you guys, and we'll meet and make any kind of amendment so you can approve it and we can sign off. Well, we waited. In June, we asked the BIA again, what's the scoop? Where is it? There was nothing. In January of 2018, they sent it back to us. They said, here's some of the required and some of the recommended changes that we have from what you approved by law already. So they did that. We adjusted. We went through our process, our ordinance approval process again. And in March 21st of 2019, we approved it. Again, we amended it again, the ordinance. And as of April 12th, 2019, we sent it in and we're waiting. What we have heard was the fact that they went through the whole political reorganization and they lost it. So, well, we're getting. So here's some lessons learned. Except for the lease terms for ag and the ag department and the definition of public, remember when you do these things, when you put in a definition of public for any kind of environmental review, unless you state it's for your reservation, the definition of public, you're talking about so many other people then who can come in and give comment on it. It's yours. It's your nation you're talking about. So we made those types of changes. And again, you can see in the second paragraph, anything of a general and permanent nature, we have to approve first by ordinance. So we do it by ordinance, then we send it to them. We can't act on it until they approve and allow us to be able to exercise our authority over the leases. So I would say if you want to do this, and you should do this, you should have that control. You should have that control, that say. Don't let the federal government do that. That's not them. You're indigenous. You're us. So you need to do that yourself. It's long. Like I said, election year, trauma just froze everything. And they actually did write back after one of those and said, well, we'll get back to you. And then finally we found out that they lost it. So they found it. Good God. So I don't know where it is in the process, but it's moving through there. And here's the final one. When you look at putting together your Hearth Act ordinance, always remember, you got to remember, they send out that first site there. They talk about a model that they can give you, and they got kind of like a template in that. You got to remember the size of the parcels you're going to do. Like we do not allow any kind of pesticides or herbicides, so we're not looking at 100, 400 acre leased areas, and that the parcels are only going to be like 2 acres a piece because you're working those. And we've got 9,000 people, so we want to make sure everybody gets a piece of that. We're like you guys, the rest of you. We're socialists, communists, tribalists, whatever you want to call us. We all own that land, so we all have a say. So whatever you do, remember, that connects with every single thing you do, and that's just a tool to be a part of that. Be cognizant of your infrastructure you have. If you say, I want to do this, yep, I'm doing this, well, you're going to do your own ARC and environmental reviews. Make sure you've got staff to do that. There's a tribal realtor involved in much of that, and the surveying. Those things cost a lot. So you got to make sure, as you're going through this, that you have those pieces in place. And after the final review, we'll come back and we'll have to fine-tooth comb the whole process, all the policies, procedures, documents, everything, to see where we stand. So I've included some links here. One is to, you can see the first one, that's to the code that we've put together, our ordinance on leasing. And we have that available if you want to take a look at that. We also put in here the BIA code, and that's a listing of, I think there's 46, 48 approved Hearth Acts, and that's through whether it's business, residential, or agriculture, and there's like 8 of those that include agriculture. So those examples are on there, and also on that site, they also show some of the needs that they have, some of the templates and frequently asked questions. But somebody should get going with that. I think it would behoove you as tribes to do that. Take care of your people. So with that, I say Matchwawanan, and I hope we have a good conference. Go Packers.